Hello, everyone. I am making sure I'm going live everywhere. I think we're there. I'm streaming on 3 different platforms now because some things were changed through Facebook groups, and so we can no longer use the one platform I was using to stream to my Facebook group. So here we are. Plus, I'm on Instagram and Facebook page. So glad to be here, everyone. We've got an exciting talk. I think this will resonate with so many people. For those of you that don't know, though, my name is Kimsey Berkwin. I'm an integrative nutritionist in my online practice, nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I help driven, ambitious, successful men and women who are struggling with their mental health and performance by taking a root-caused body-mind approach to optimize their physical and mental health. And today, this talk is for you if you struggle with ADD, ADHD, brain fog, or just poor focus in general. This talk is for you. And maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your kids. Some people listening, it may be your kids that have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, or your teachers are telling you that they struggle with focus in class. And there's the threat of medication. And many people that we work with, they don't want to medicate themselves, let alone their children. And so that is what I'm logging on to talk about today, is the top 2 drivers of poor focus that I see in my practice, and tips and recommendations for optimizing your cognitive performance. So let me first notify everyone that I am getting on. I swear this changes every week. That is so weird. I used to be able to do that. Okay, well, I'll do it later. Not a problem. Okay, so let me elaborate a little bit more on what I'm talking about. Do you find it difficult to sit down on focus on one task at a time? Or is there you sit down to write an email or work on something, and then you start looking at your phone or opening other tabs on the internet, or cleaning your house if you work from home, or doing your laundry, or just anything else other than focusing on the task at hand? Or maybe you've noticed that your mental speed has slowed. You used to be able to multitask and juggle a million things a day, and now you're struggling just to keep track of, one thing at a time without getting kind of lost or confused or overwhelmed. Maybe it's your memory that is starting to fade, if you will, particularly short-term memory. So that's something that people will bring up to me is, they used to be able to keep their running to-do list in their head, for example, or all of their kids' activities scheduled in their head, but now they're forgetting things here and there, and showing up at work, how they'll forget minor details, but important details. Do you walk into a room and forget why? Or do you forget why you parked your car, or where you left your keys? Or do you notice brain fog, just that slow mental processing where you get lost, you're kind of spacing out in the middle of conversations? Or I know when I experienced brain fog, I would forget what I was writing in the middle of an email. These are all different ways that poor cognition can manifest. And the kind of overall overarching recommendation from conventional medicine is medication. And so that usually involves some kind of stimulant medication like Ritalin or Vyvanse or Adderall. And at the core, what those things are doing is they're influencing dopamine and or norepinephrine. And those are 2 neurochemicals that are very critical for our ability to not only focus, but also our motivation and drive. So what if, though, we looked underneath the hood, we take it deeper, and we look at what is actually affecting our brain chemistry, and see how our brain chemistry and imbalances within the brain chemistry might be at the root of poor focus and cognition. And that's the approach that we take. because the brain is extremely sensitive to nutrient levels and metabolic shifts and stress and inflammation and toxin exposure. So when a client's coming in complaining, like one of their chief symptoms is poor focus and brain fog and like mental fatigue, I look at that as a spectrum. And on the low end of the spectrum is a lot of what we're going to talk about today, because the beauty about this low end of the spectrum is you make a couple of tweaks in your diet and lifestyle, and it can make a huge difference in your cognition. So at the low end of the spectrum, I think of nutrient deficiencies, macro and micro. So that's one thing that we're going to talk about today. I'll get into that in just a minute, but I think about nutrient deficiencies. I also think about stress and nervous system dysregulation. That's another thing that we're going to talk about today. But then I go up, and I also think about blood sugar, and then we go up the spectrum. And if those foundations are laid and the person is still struggling with brain fog or ADD or difficulty focusing or memory problems, then we start peeling away the layers of the onion accordingly. We look at gut health, because really important to realize that the gut microbiome can produce all of the same neurochemicals that our brain does: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. So if there are imbalances in the gut microbiome, not to mention the gut microbiome can also become a source of stress that then dysregulates the nervous system. Plus toxins and inflammation and maldigestion. So like the gut microbiome is huge. So we'll always look at the gut microbiome. And then from there, we'll sometimes look at hormones or toxins, like if the person's been exposed to mold. This is where it becomes so important to look at the person's history and their other objective health markers and subjective health experience. Do they have any other symptoms, for example? But like I said, where we always start is with that low-hanging fruit. And especially if anybody is listening that has kids and you're watching this on behalf of your children, that low-hanging fruit is critical. Oftentimes, kids just need a tweak in their diet and like actually allowed to have access to let out all their energy, to have unstructured playtime in order for their focus to be improved. So let's talk about what the two biggest things are, the two biggest drivers that I see behind poor focus. I'm going to keep repeating it: ADD, brain fog, all these things. I'm going to umbrella that though and just say mental performance. So if you're tuning in right now, just know that when I say mental performance, I'm referring to the symptoms of ADD, ADHD, brain fog, and poor focus. And I described the symptoms more in depth at the beginning of this talk. Two biggest things: nutrient deficiencies, specifically of protein, essential fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals. And when I say vitamins and minerals, B vitamins are huge for this. But then we'll also see like zinc and copper and some other really important ones, but I'm going to focus on B vitamins. Number two is a dysregulated nervous system, and that can show up in many ways. But stress is how we used to refer to it as, but I no longer just globally refer to it as stress, because many people don't really identify with that word. They don't feel stressed if you ask them. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, they're more reactive with their kids. They're more reactive with their loved ones. They struggle with sleep at night, but then feel tired during the day. They are sensitive to different sensory stimuli like smells or sounds or sights. They are really sensitive to other people's emotional states. They might experience a lot of food reactions, digestive symptoms, chronic pain, skin conditions. Like these things can all be signs of dysregulated nervous systems. And really, I think one of the biggest ones is always feeling overwhelmed and always feeling on edge, feeling that burnout, feeling that arousal state. Those are the more common signs of dysregulated nervous system that we see. So let's talk about nutrition. So even though the brain only weighs 2% of our body weight, it demands 20% of our fuel supply. The brain, like I said, is extremely sensitive to metabolic shifts and nutrient status. Every cell in the brain, called neurons, is insulated by a fatty, what's called myelin sheath. And just like an electrical cord is insulated in rubber to make sure that that electrical chemical only travels in one direction, doesn't spread out from it, that's what the myelin sheath does. And I'm describing kind of overall brain anatomy right now so that we can really appreciate how significant nutrition is for the brain. So that myelin sheath is comprised of fats that we eat. And so if we're not eating healthy fats, that myelin sheath will be degraded, but I'm going to stay focused on the overall anatomy. Is insulated by this myelin sheath. Our neurochemicals, the important ones like acetylcholine and dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin, and all of these neurochemicals that work intricately together to become the architect of our mood and our focus and our cognition and our sleep and our stress reactivity and our physical movements and our memory. They're all comprised of amino acids, which we get from protein. And then we need nutrients like B vitamins and antioxidants to manufacture those neurochemicals. So nutrition plays a direct key into how our brain is structured, like the actual architecture of the brain, but then also the architecture, the function of the brain. And I'm going to talk about some of the key things that I see depleted. So protein, let's start with protein. Protein is we get from food largely, and protein food sources would include like animal products like red meat and chicken and eggs and turkey and all the animal products, but then also plant-based proteins like from nuts and seeds and legumes. Proteins are broken down into amino acids in the digestive tract. And those amino acids are then absorbed through the digestive tract and travel to different areas of the body where they're utilized. Part of that is the brain. And so in the brain is where our neurons will manufacture the different neurochemicals that are needed. So the neurons will manufacture the neurochemicals. I do want to emphasize again that gut microbiota will also interact with those amino acids to manufacture the neurochemicals in the enteric nervous system or in the digestive tract. Again, 95% of the serotonin in the body is in the digestive tract. I think 50% of the dopamine is in the digestive tract. However, I do want to be clear, most of what's made in the gut stays in the gut, or it doesn't. The brain will make its own neurochemistry, but there is some translocation. And there's definitely an influence based on the activities of the microbiome and what the brain is able to manufacture as far as neurochemicals go. And part of that also has to do with like inflammatory levels and oxidative stress and short chain fatty acid production. So not a direct connection, but albeit a connection. So protein. Many people, because we have readily available protein, we would not think that we are protein deficient per se. However, many people functionally would be considered protein deficient. So this isn't just the vegans and the vegetarians, which most people, would come to mind for most people. And that is something very much that needs to be, there needs to be an awareness of, like the signs of protein deficiency, like thinning hair, fatigue, poor skin, joint pain, anxiety, depression, poor focus, brain fog, anemias, bruising easily. Those are some other examples of lower inadequate protein levels. So Optimally, from a protein perspective, we're eating at least, so there's a range, but I would aim for on average 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So to take your body weight in pounds and convert it into kilograms, you divide your pounds by 2.2, and that will give you the amount of kilograms. And then you just multiply the kilograms per pound, or by 1, right? So you just get the 1. I was hiccuping on that because we usually use a range, so like 0.8 to 1.2, depending on the person's age and activity levels, et cetera. But for simplicity's sake, just aim for 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So oftentimes that'll be around, call it, it really depends, but like 70 to 120 grams of protein per day. These are adults, not kids. So these would be adult ranges. To give you a reference, 1 4-ounce serving, or like the palm of your hand, of an animal protein is about 30 grams. So it's pretty easy to calculate the amount of protein that you're getting in per day. So I would really encourage paying attention to, and maybe just doing a trial day, like figure out what your optimal grams of protein are per day, and then do a trial day where you're calculating how much protein you're eating and see where you come up to that number. I strongly encourage, I recommend this for all of my clients, to break your fast with protein, because that also balances your blood sugar for the rest of the, like sets a balanced blood sugar stage for the rest of the day. Because my bonus number 3 of the third biggest reason, or like driver behind poor focus that I see, is imbalanced blood sugar. So blood sugar is doing these swings throughout the day rather than staying in a nice narrow range. And like I said, the brain is very sensitive to blood sugar and metabolic shifts. So more on that in just a minute. So inadequate protein that directly translates into a deficiency in what we can manufacture for our neurochemicals, the important ones in focus and cognition. Not to mention, protein is also used in many different areas of the body, like thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is manufactured from a backbone of amino acids, tyrosine. We need protein to manufacture enzymes and connective tissue and immunoglobulins and other hormones like insulin. Protein is extremely important for many different reasons, and that's why protein deficiency manifests in different ways. And all of those can affect focus and cognition. Okay, so inadequate protein is a big one. If you're eating sufficient protein, but you are taking an antacid medication or you have chronic acid reflux, that would be something to keep in mind that may be inhibiting the absorption of your protein. If you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or other digestive issues, that's important to keep in mind, that you may not be adequately absorbing the protein too. Okay, number 2, vitamins and minerals. So I mentioned I'm going to focus on B vitamins for this. All of the vitamins and minerals, you can make an argument for how they play a role in our neurochemistry, but B vitamins in particular are so important. And B vitamins are water soluble, which means we cannot store them. So adequate intake of Bs, which happens to overlap with our protein, because some of the best food sources of B vitamins are animal proteins, is very important. B vitamins are like the spark plug to the car. We have to have Bs in order to create energy and neurochemicals in the brain and nervous system. And especially, so Bs are easily depleted because we can't store them. And then oftentimes people aren't eating enough food, B vitamin containing foods, right? Again, especially the vegans and vegetarians, but this is not just a talk for them, right? This is a talk for anybody that is not eating adequate protein or, a well-balanced, rounded diet. And kids are some of the biggest, they're the easiest ones because they often don't want to eat a lot of varied foods. And so they may be getting limited nutrition, and that could be directly impacting their ability to focus. So kids are really, really big, and if you have to supplement, great, like that's fine, especially for a time being, especially with B vitamins. But then start working with creating, cultivating a really healthy diet. So B vitamins, I once had a professor describe the brain as a ball of fat in B vitamins because of how critical B vitamins are for the nervous system. That's why some of the first symptoms of B vitamin deficiency, like B12, for example, are neurological in nature, like tingling in the limbs and fatigue. So definitely consider B vitamins, and the form matters too. I would always, look for a methylated form. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of this. I'm trying to keep this talk short so it's more digestible for people. But methyl Bs would be a better form to strive for. That's kind of a general rule. And then I mentioned the best food sources. Now, liver, like chicken liver, beef liver, a great source of B vitamins and iron and vitamin A and choline and like all these amazing nutrients, like organ meats in general, phenomenal if you're open to eating those. But then also think about like fatty fish, like sardines and salmon and red meat that's really high quality and organic and grass-fed and wild caught, bison, beef, venison, lamb, whole spectrum out there of animal products. It's not just like beef and chicken. So a varied diet is great too. All right. And then let's see. Oh, I wanted to talk about dysregulated nervous system. So what, like a sample diet though, before I go into that, a sample diet that could really, really help, like small tweaks to a diet. Like I said, break your fast with protein, ditch the sugary coffee creamers, ditch the sugar. Like if you drink coffee and run out the door eating a banana, that is a recipe to like crash in the afternoon and not be able to sit through class or work. Kids included. So break your fast with protein, grab a couple of hard-boiled eggs. If you can get some fat and like complex carbs in there too, that would be even better. So like some hard-boiled eggs with half of an avocado and some berries, for example, or a protein smoothie with like a protein shake blended with blueberries and coconut cream, like canned coconut cream. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy, but a little bit of fat, lots of protein, a little bit of healthy carbs. Start your day with that, and that can be phenomenal. Set the stage for balanced blood sugar the rest of the day. So I'm going to talk about the blood sugar because we're on the nutrition track, and then I'll talk about the dysregulated nervous system. So blood sugar, the brain, like I said, gets 20% of our fuel supply and is very sensitive to glucose levels, which again is why some of the key first signs and symptoms of low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, are neurological, like shaky and hangry, irritable, tired, yawning, foggy. So ideally, we're engaging in more of a metabolic shift where the brain can have glucose available. And then if needed, we'll dip into ketosis briefly. It'll run on ketones and fat and then shift back into glucose. Like that metabolic flexibility that happens on a day-to-day basis is how we were designed. Ketones are very rich fuel source, like clean burning, high octane fuel source. There's a reason why ketogenic diets are used in epilepsy, for example, because of how it influences the brain. So I'm not talking about ketosis, but what I am saying is metabolic flexibility and balanced blood sugar. So we want blood sugar to stay in this nice narrow range throughout the day. So what I encourage to set the stage with that is fasting for at least 12 hours overnight. You can start maybe playing around with 14, maybe start dipping into 16, but at least 12 hours overnight. And then break your fast with protein. And then you want to start working towards eliminating snacking. So start working towards spacing your meals and snacks by 4 to 5 hours. That really promotes for that metabolic flexibility. But that can take a couple months to get to if you're used to eating like 5 times a day, right? Okay, and then limit the sugar. limit the sugar. Like go through your food and look and see what refined sugars are you eating. Are you eating desserts? Are you eating added sugars? Are you eating sugary coffee creamers? Are you drinking sodas? Are you eating fast food? Like limit the sugars. And then healthy fats, like I mentioned before, from like avocado and coconut and olives and grass-fed, wild-caught animal proteins, like all of those things, because that myelin sheath and regulating the immune system, all of those things are so important for brain health and blood sugar. Okay, I want to make sure to have time talking about a dysregulated nervous system because this shows up in adults and kids. So nervous system dysregulation. If the nervous system is dysregulated, what that means is the nervous system is stuck in the threat loop. So basically, it's responding to a past threat, perceived threat, in the present moment. The nervous system is running from a lion, even if there's not even a metaphorical lion to be running from, but there's the perception of one. Right? We may be afraid that the boss is going to get mad at us. We may be stuck in traffic and we're going to be afraid that we're going to get to work late and that is going to, upset whatever. We're going to miss a deadline or whatever it might be. Underneath it is fear and overwhelm. And we start in the arousal space. And then as that dysregulation continues, it leads into a burnout space. What happens with a dysregulated nervous system, though, is you can kind of envision and appreciate this. If you're looking at lions running all around you, you're not going to be able to focus on what's in front of on your computer screen, right? But in today's day and age, those lions all around us is our to-do list. It's the constantly being on and running through, and the sensory stimulation, the text messages, the email alerts, does my kid have soccer tonight or is it tomorrow? What are we going to have for dinner tonight? Am I cooking it? Who's picking up my kid? Let alone talking about everything else that needs to be done in life. So that nervous system dysregulation is so killer to our ability to focus. So what I recommend for this, the way that I describe it is I recommend having in the moment, it's like exercise, right? Just because you exercised for an hour in the morning doesn't mean that you're going to be sedentary the rest of the day. Get up and walk and go do stuff and move around with your kids. You still want to move, but it's also beneficial to have a dedicated exercise. That's the same for regulating the nervous system. I recommend having exercises that we do throughout the day and a dedicated mindfulness practice. So what I recommend, and this can be 5 minutes, but starting your day with 5 minutes of heart-focused breathing. You can do this before you get out of bed. You can do this while you're drinking your coffee, wherever it fits into your morning, but before you've left the house and gone to work, before you're in the mayhem of it all, 5 minutes. And I mean, set the timer on your phone so you can't think you're talk yourself out of this. 5 minutes, heart-focused breathing, belly diaphragmatic breathing. Close your eyes, draw your attention to your heart. Breathe in slowly to a count of 4, breathing only through the belly, not the chest, only through the belly. And then physiological sigh. Exhale through the mouth or the nose, either one, but you're really sighing it out. Breathe that way while focusing your attention on the heart for 5 minutes in the morning. That can be really powerful. And then you can do that same thing throughout the day whenever you're starting to feel overwhelmed or stressed. I'll have many other recommendations for people. We'll often start to build upon that heart-focused breathing into other forms of actual heart rate variability biofeedback. We'll talk about cold showers and cold face dunks and elevating your heart rate or bringing it down. There's many different ways to regulate the heart rate, the nervous system, but that at its core, how you start your day for 5 minutes and visualizing like calm moods and confidence and abundance, like visualizing these positive regenerative emotions. It's a really powerful starting point. And if you're getting ready for, to go into work or to give a presentation or to take a test or something that really requires your focus, that is really, really powerful to do even like 30 seconds before going into that scenario. All right, everyone. That's what I've got for you today. So what I'm trying to tell you is that optimal mental performance can be like the result of just a few nutrition tweaks, reducing the sugar in your diet, balancing your blood sugar by breaking your fast with protein, and getting in spaced fasting throughout the day, prioritizing protein and eating at least 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. And I told you how to convert that. Emphasizing like healthy fats also, and lower carb, brightly colored fruits and vegetables, and then tools for regulating your nervous system. Like that could be tremendous for a lot of people. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't really make a difference in your focus, then we do look at things like hormones and gut health and toxin exposure. Like there can be more, but those foundations are really critical. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm on the verge of starting a stimulant medication to enhance my focus, or like my kid's doctor is talking about doing that for them, and I do not want to go down that road, and I really desperately want to be able to focus better and think clearly, feel free, schedule a 15-minute consultation, free 15-minute consultation with me. The link is in my bio on Instagram. It's in my Facebook group, Mental Holistic Solutions for Mental Health and Wellness. You can also go to my website, progressivehealthandwellness.com, and let's talk about what an action plan for getting started would look like for you. All right, everyone. Hope this was helpful. See you later this week. Bye.